Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. What a weekend. There is so much to talk about this morning, so let me bullet point some of the things that really affected me so that we can at least define what we're concerned about. Let's begin with Donald Trump denying that he signed the Enemy Alien Act, which we know he did because it appears on his website with his signature. Now, the claim the White House is making is, what Donald Trump really meant was he didn't sign the act. Of course, John Adams did. But of course, in order to consider this act as part of policy today, Donald Trump signed the order. There's no question. You can see it online at the White House. The fact that now Donald Trump is trying to blame Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, for an action which he took is unconscionable. And in a normal circumstance, well, Marco Rubio should be outraged. Instead, I think he's absolutely dumbfounded. And then there is the idea of the court trying to usurp the powers of the president, which is the charge that Donald Trump is making against the chief judge of the D.C. Circuit, James Boasberg. Well, I immediately went to my library, took off the shelf, Set the Record Straight by Judge John Sirica. You all remember John Sirica. He was the Eisenhower-nominated judge who presided over the Watergate trial, which brought to reality the knowledge about Watergate. By the way, who was the person who nominated Judge Boasberg to the court? No, it wasn't Barack Obama. Originally, it was George W. Bush. Now, it's true, Obama elevated him, but that is not the point. The point is that this judge has ruled with Donald Trump on innumerable occasions, including the confidentiality of his income tax. And yet he is under attack. And there is something that we need to understand. Judge Sirica's example is the one that ought to be followed. For a president to wage a war against a sitting district court judge is unconscionable. Let's be absolutely clear about that. But more than that, what did Donald Trump do this weekend? He went to war against private law firms that have attacked him, that have helped to make the case against him. What are we talking about here? What is this president doing? It is outrageous. It is egregious. And more than anything else, it's just plain wrong. There is more. There is more. We know now that Columbia University has caved to Donald Trump's demands, and if they didn't follow his instructions, their funding would be cut off. And what did Columbia University do? It caved. Let me be clear. I believe in freedom of speech. And when the government uses funds to essentially clobber a university into submission, there is something seriously wrong. And make no mistake, I am no friend of Hamas. I am one of the greatest advocates for Israel that you will ever hear or see. But the idea that federal funds should be used as a club in order to require that a university comply with free speech as the Trump administration envisions it is just plain wrong. And so I'm ashamed that Columbia University's administration did it, but I understand what blackmail is, and that's what we encountered here, blackmail. Let me also say a word about Social Security. The Trump administration is clearly going after Social Security. There's no doubt about it. Make no mistake. And even though they can deny it from here to hell and back again, the goal is to make Social Security voluntary. We went through this with George W. Bush in 2005. And ultimately, George W. Bush pulled back because there was such opposition. The Republicans would do well to remember the wise words of Dwight D. Eisenhower, who said any administration that went after Social Security would find itself in deep trouble. And my friends, there is FEMA. Let me point out that we face disaster after disaster across this country, and the Trump administration is putting the axe to FEMA. There is something that is insane about this policy, and we will all rue the day when this became the policy of the federal government. I want to say a word about Easter. There will be an Easter egg roll on the White House, as there has been for many, many years. I've witnessed the Easter egg roll on the White House lawn. And now what we are hearing is that the Trump administration is seeking corporate sponsors. Corporate sponsors for an Easter egg roll? That is, I think, absolutely wrong. It's essentially seeking money as a bribe. Oh, it's true. They say that the money will go to the White House Historical Association. But this is unconscionable. It is a misuse of the Easter egg hunt roll on the White House. And today, we were informed that Usha Vance, the wife of the vice president, will be joined by the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. They're going to Greenland. Why are they going to Greenland? To try to convince Greenland to become a part of the United States of America. Again, absolutely outrageous and egregious and just plain wrong. And I hope that the unity that exists in Greenland between the political leaders, 5 political parties, have all said they will reject this kind of overture. And then, of course, there is the decision to call Russia not a threat to Europe. That was the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. Let me explain something to you very simply. The rhetoric being used today reminds me of Neville Chamberlain, peace in our time. No, my friends, this is just plain wrong, and we have a lot to discuss. Now, I do this in a bullet point way because I don't have the luxury of time, but you have the luxury of looking into these issues and examining them. And may I say, I hope you understand that what we are witnessing now by the Trump administration is dangerous beyond words. Let me say it again. It is dangerous beyond words. And somebody said to me, John, aren't you afraid to say this? Of course not. I live in the United States of America, where freedom of speech is still treasured. But let me tell you something. We have an administration that I believe is completely out of kilter, suggesting things that are completely wrong, taking actions that will, in the end, hurt America. I say that respectfully, but I say it absolutely, and I think we'd better understand what we are facing today. That's the truth. That's the reality. And we need voices that will stand up and express this clearly and precisely to the American people. It is time for a loyal opposition which says, oh yes, we support America, but it doesn't mean we have to support every policy articulated by a president. One last comment. Donald Trump seems to believe in the unitary presidency. That is, that the president makes the policy and people simply have to conform. I have news for Donald Trump and for the Republican Party. Heaven forbid that America should ever be at that point where a president can dictate policy. This is the United States of America. And the reality is we all have a voice, and we should. And so we are going to continue to expose the kind of things that Donald Trump is doing on so many different levels. And although I bullet pointed it this morning, just give me a chance to speak to you more directly, as we will do in the next few months, and I regret to say it appears years. Don't worry, we'll be vocal, active, and clear. From this podcast, you will get what we see as the unvarnished truth. Off the bark, as they say, and I believe we face real problems. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. That is, of course, our goal. Remember, you can interact with me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and of course, you can email me at your pleasure. I try to answer and consider everything which is said. And finally, I want to say a big thank you to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast. We do our best every day, Monday through Friday, to try to convey to you what we feel strongly about, and we hope that we can continue to do it for many, many years to come. Gogo, thanks for everything you're doing. We appreciate it more than we can say. This is John Rothman, and you are listening to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'll see you tomorrow, right here, and I can't wait.